What is it that gives a life meaning, especially when you're facing just unimaginable suffering? That's really the core question in Viktor Frankl's incredible book, Man's Search for Meaning. And honestly, it's so much more than a book. It's one of the most powerful lessons you'll ever find on human resilience. And it was born from one of the darkest times in history. So let's dive in and explore his journey to find that answer.
Now, this might sound like a pretty shocking question, right? Why do you not commit suicide? But this is exactly what the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl would often ask his patients. It wasn't about being morbid, not at all. It was actually this incredibly sharp tool. Because the answer, whether it was, I love my children, or I have a book to finish, or I cherish a memory, that answer revealed the one thing that anchored them to life. It showed him the very thing that made it all worth living.
And pretty soon, Frankl had to answer that exact question for himself, because he went from being a doctor observing patients to being prisoner 11,1904 in the Nazi concentration camps. We're talking Auschwitz and Dachau. He was stripped of everything, what he called a naked existence, and lost his father, his mother, his brother, and his wife. It was right there, in the middle of all that unimaginable loss, that his theories about meaning were put to the ultimate test.
So, to really understand the incredible insight he had, we first have to get a sense of the psychological journey he and millions of others went through. Frankl, always the trained observer, he started to notice this clear pattern in how the inmates' minds reacted to living in this hell on earth.
He saw it happening in three distinct phases. First up was shock. Right when they arrived, there was this sense of disbelief, and he called it a delusion of reprieve, this wild, desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as bad as it seemed. That was followed by phase two, apathy. This was a kind of emotional death, where you had to numb your feelings just to survive the constant daily horrors. And then finally, for the very few who made it out, came phase three. This really strange feeling of depersonalization after being liberated, where freedom felt unreal, almost too much to even process.
In what Frankl called a cultural hibernation, life just completely regressed. All the things we think are important, art, career, hobbies, they all just vanished. Instead, the mind became obsessed with one single thing. And you know what prisoners dreamed about? It was almost never about freedom. No, their dreams were about bread, cake, cigarettes, a warm bath. The body's most basic, desperate needs just took over everything.
But here's the thing. It was right there, in the midst of all this brutality and suffering, that Frankl made a discovery so profound it would literally define his entire life and work. It was an insight into the very essence of what it means to be free.
He watched as everything, absolutely everything, was taken away. Your home, your family, your job, your health, even your name was replaced by a number. All of it could be gone in a second. And watching this led him to this incredible realization. Everything can be stripped away from a person, except for one thing.
And this one, single, untouchable liberty, this final refuge of yourself, is what he called
The last of the human freedoms. Think about that. You can't control what happens to you. You can't control your circumstances, but you always get to choose your inner response, your attitude, your perspective. That is the one freedom that no one can ever take away from you.
And this wasn't just some abstract idea. He saw it happen every single day. He saw it in the prisoners who would walk through the barracks comforting others, giving away their very last piece of bread. He felt it himself when he found a moment of salvation just by picturing his wife's face. He saw it in people using a grim sense of humor to feel human again, or just in the simple decision to be, as Dostoevsky put it, worthy of your sufferings.
So this profound experience in the camps, it did more than just help Frankl survive. It became the living, breathing proof for the school of psychotherapy he would go on to create, and it's called Logotherapy.
The word logos is Greek, and it means meaning. So at its heart, logotherapy says that our primary drive as human beings isn't pleasure, which is what Freud argued. No, Frankl said our main drive is the search for what we personally find meaningful.
And that difference is huge. See, Freud thought our problems came from frustration in our sexual lives. But Frankl said, no, a lot of our modern anxiety and depression actually comes from a frustration in our will to meaning. He called it an existential void. We suffer because we don't have a clear sense of purpose.
Okay, so how do we fill that void? Frankl suggested a complete flip in how we look at things. He said we need to stop asking, what do I expect from life? Instead, we have to ask ourselves, what does life expect from me? Life is constantly asking us questions, and our answers aren't found in words. They're found in our actions, in taking responsibility. And this leads us to the really practical part of his work. Frankl didn't just point out the problem, he gave us a clear map forward. He laid out 3 main paths that any of us can take to discover meaning in our lives. First, we can find meaning by creating a work or doing a deed. This is all about what we give to the world. Second is by experiencing something or encountering someone. This is what we take from the world, through love, through relationships, through appreciating art or nature. And the third path, this one is maybe the most profound. It's the meaning we can find in the attitude we take towards suffering we can't avoid. When you can't change your situation anymore, you're challenged to change yourself.
Frankl often used this quote from Nietzsche to wrap up this whole powerful idea. Having a strong sense of purpose doesn't make the suffering go away, but it makes it bearable. If you have a why, you can endure almost any how. That was the secret to survival, both physically and spiritually, that he saw all around him in the camps.
So, in the end, Frankl's incredible book isn't just a story about surviving the unthinkable. It's a challenge. It turns the question right back to every single one of us. And it's not some deep philosophical puzzle. It's a daily, living responsibility. His entire journey really just leads us to this final personal question, the one that we all have to answer for ourselves.